You think you know the guillotine, the swift, humane blade of the French Revolution, the symbol of equality and death that brought down kings and queens. That's the story they put in the textbooks. But buckle up, because the reality was a carnival of horrors so grotesque it would make a serial killer blush. A spectacle of state-sponsored butchery where the blade was the star of the show and the streets literally ran red with blood. We're talking about botched executions that turned humane deaths into slow-motion torture, heads that reportedly blinked and grimaced long after being severed, and a public bloodlust so insane that people would bring their children to watch and picnic at the foot of the scaffold. You're about to discover the sickening truths about the guillotine that have been conveniently sliced out of history. This isn't a story about justice. It's a story about what happens when an entire nation goes mad. Let's start with the biggest lie of all, that the guillotine was quick and painless. When it worked, maybe. But it didn't always work. The executioners, the famous Sanson family, were master craftsmen, but they were horrifically overworked. During the Reign of Terror, they were executing dozens of people a day. The blades would get dull. The wooden grooves would get clogged with blood and gore. And the result? Absolute butchery. There are documented accounts of the blade failing to sever the neck on the first drop. It would lodge halfway through the bone, requiring the executioners to repeatedly drop the blade or climb the scaffold to manually saw through the victim's remaining flesh and spine in front of a screaming, jeering crowd. Here's a detail that will haunt you. The condemned were often carted to the scaffold in groups. They had to sit and watch, one by one, as the person in front of them was strapped down and decapitated. They would be soaked in the blood of their predecessors before it was even their turn. Humane. It was a conveyor belt of psychological terror. But what happened after the blade fell is where things get truly bizarre. The crowd wasn't just there for the death, they were there for the head. The executioner's assistant would hold the severed head up for the crowd to see. And this is where the eyewitness accounts become the stuff of nightmares. For decades, people swore that the heads remained conscious. In one infamous case, after the execution of a woman named Charlotte Corday, the executioner's assistant slapped the severed head's cheek. Witnesses claim the head's face blushed with indignation and its eyes glared at him with pure fury. Doctors at the time were obsessed with this. They would shout the deceased's name into the severed ear to see if the eyes would respond. Some scientists claimed to have seen lips trying to form words. While modern science says this was likely just nerve spasms, imagine being in that crowd, seeing what you believe is a thinking, feeling head, completely aware of its own decapitation. It turned execution into a ghoulish paranormal experiment. You don't learn this in history class, but the executions weren't solemn events. They were the biggest public entertainment in Paris. They were called the Red Mass. Vendors sold programs listing the names of the day's performers. Women known as the tricoteuses would sit at the foot of the scaffold, knitting peacefully between beheadings as if it were a day in the park. It gets worse. The ground around the guillotine became so saturated with blood that it turned into a stinking, muddy swamp of human remains. The stench of iron and death hung over the entire city square. And yet, people were drawn to it. They developed a sick souvenir culture. People would dip their handkerchiefs in the blood of the executed as a memento. An entire industry of guillotine-themed products popped up. Earrings, candy boxes, children's toys, all shaped like the machine of death. It was a national obsession, a complete societal breakdown where mass death became a trendy fad. And what about the men who operated the machine? The Sanson family were the executioners of France for generations. They were celebrities and outcasts at the same time. They were rich from their grisly work, but they were seen as tainted by death. No one would shake their hand. They had to live in social isolation. Charles-Henri Sanson, the man who personally executed King Louis XVI, was a deeply conflicted man. He hated his job. He kept meticulous diaries detailing his disgust at the bloodlust of the crowds and the terror in the eyes of the condemned. He was a prisoner of his own profession. The truly terrifying part is that the guillotine didn't end the violence, it fed it. The more people they killed, the more paranoid the leaders became, and the more heads had to roll to satisfy the mob. The machine that was meant to be a symbol of rational, enlightened justice became an engine of pure, insatiable rage. Its legacy isn't equality. It's a masterclass in how quickly civilization can strip itself away, leaving nothing but a ravenous crowd cheering for more blood.